to do
think,
that?
I think, yeah, so it'll be before we, Levy, you may have missed part of that. I just added something to the agenda casually, which is, I was wondering if people would like to do a legal session on 830G with one of our attorneys, just just to refresh us on the standards that are applied and why, and how the case law has worked over the last 35 years. We may do that in August if that's all right with everybody. I'll try to do it in the first few days of September to give us a break, because I don't know about you guys, but I am really tired. Tuesday killed me.
If one thing that could help is to perhaps try to have shorter meetings.
Recording in progress.
Uh-huh.
Well,
Okey-dokey.
also, we
So,
have P and Z meetings in the first week in September, don't we? Right after Labor Day?
Yeah, we are on the 4th.
we
So we
do,
have a
but
short
I
week,
want
plus that's
I
not
want to
enough.
have the session before we decide Mason Street, for example. Want
Okay.
everybody to just have a refresher.
I am not
Okay.
available the week before September 1st and the week after September 1st.
All right, so we're gonna have to, that's kind of tricky. Because I think a couple of the things, I just think it's worthwhile. Okay, so hello, everybody. This is the Planning and Zoning Commission of Greenwich, and we're meeting virtually on Monday, August 12th at 11 a.m. And we are here for two reasons. One is to vote to extend the MI on the rink application. I don't believe Mr. Romano needs to speak.
He doesn't, but I do want him to be here on the record so that we have it.
Okay, so Mr. Romano has now joined us, but we're okay, I've said that, so he doesn't need to talk, right?
No, we're just going to
Okay.
act in our capacity.
All right,
It's not enough.
so as regards our first item on the agenda, we have or are in the process, I believe Patrick has already summarized all the questions that P and Z raised at our hearing last week and has sent them to DPW.
Sorry, not quite yet. I talked to them about most of them, but that list is still worked on right now. Sorry.
Okay, so Mr. LaRoe is in the process of sending all the open questions to us, to DPW. And we are thus not in a position, would be my recommendation, to close the MI, as you know, or to vote on it. So I would suggest we wait till we have all the answers and can ascertain if the proposal is consistent with the POCD. Mr. Lowe.
I don't know whether there was a plan to send what you're going to send to DPW to us, but I for one would like to see that list.
Great.
I will. Happy to share
that would not a problem. Patrick has asked me the same question about whether or not I would want to see it. And he said, and so now we know that everybody wants to see it. Okay, well,
I don't know about other people, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, I'm assuming.
I'm happy to share with everybody, and we can,
if we have a piece of information that only goes to one commissioner, that's not good. So it needs to go to everybody.
Well, then I apologize for imposing this on everyone else.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
It's not an imposition. Don't worry.
Okay. So I therefore, first of all, Mr. McRae, I believe that you will be handling this application similarly to what we do with the building committees, which is that you'll participate in the discussions that the commission has, but you will not be voting on any of it. So you were technically are recused then, is that correct?
That is correct. And also a note that this actually is not a building committee as we understand it. This is more of a design committee. The Planning and Zoning Commission itself has not appointed me to this committee.
And also, to further clarify what Mr. McRae has said, the school building committees have a statutory role. They are created by state law and are also required by our charter. So they have legal standing. This building design committee has no legal standing. It was created as an advisory committee by our first selectman, and it does not have the statutory position that a school building committee has, which is required by state law. Therefore, I would like to clarify that seated on this application at this time are Lowe, Jenkins, Levy, and myself, as well as Mr. Yeski, who is absent. So we don't have all the voting members here. I believe Mr. Yeski would like to remain seated, so we will take a vote of the four of us. If that fails to pass, it will need all four of us. If that fails, we'll have Plan B. So I hereby make a motion that we leave the municipal improvement application open for 90 days or until we find that we have sufficient information provided us by DPW and the Parks and Recreation Department to render a decision as to consistency with the POCD. Do I have a second?
Second,
Mr. Lowe has seconded. Mr. Lowe, how do you vote?
aye, in favor
Mr.
of,
Mr. Levy, I was gonna go Mr. Jenkins. Mr. Levy? Mr. Levy,
I,
Madam Jenkins?
Aye.
Albin is also aye, and with that, the motion passes 4-0. The next item on our agenda is to discuss how we would like to handle the proposal of the folks at American Can. They would like to,
you got one question, please?
Yes.
I know I'm interrupting, but back on the rink thing before we go on to the next item. Is it possible to clarify the role of the rink committee as whatever it is?
I
in
just
term-
clarified it as much as we're going to clarify it. It was created by the first selectman as an
Right.
advisory committee, and it does not have the legal standing of a building
Right.
committee.
It's advisory to DPW?
No
Yes.
clue.
Yeah, well, yes, I guess so. As the first selectman is the in charge of that department. So yeah, I would say through him to DPW. Yep.
But
Similar
our
to,
applicant is DPW, correct?
Yes.
Hmm.
right, it's similar to what happened with the Old Greenwich Civic Center. There was a design committee, but the Department of Public Works is the
Proponent.
applicant and the division or the department in town that's charged with actually the work, the construction, the project, if you would.
And it's DPW that is responsible and is our applicant.
Yes.
They're the applicant. So they will be communicating. We will be communicating to
I
them.
believe that Mr. Lowe may be asking this question because has been unclear who is the representative before us. So I believe Mr. Romano, since he's listening, needs to make it very clear that this is DPW and with the blessing of Parks and Rec, that this fits what their goals are. We tried to get that at the last meeting to make that very clear that we needed Mr. Wells made it the clearest of all of us that we want one voice representing what the town, what the proposal is. Mr. McRae, I misunderstood what you were saying at the last meeting, and I apologize subsequently to Nick. Nick was saying you can't be, Nick was talking about the road. We can modify an application, but it is our call. In the sense that, we asked the proponent, and I think that was what Mr. McRae was trying to clarify, that you can't have two voices coming in with two different applications. Okay. That's
And presumably Mr. Romano understands that our position is when they next come before us is they will present something as a single voice and we will respond to DPW. And if they have to coordinate with other advisory committees, that should be done outside of our meetings.
okay. Luigi, I just brought you in just because I don't want us talking about you behind your screen. So I know you know this, but Arn made it the clearest, but it's to have one voice.
Heard loud and clear.
Heard loud and clear. And Pat's list is going to be extensive of the stuff that we asked. You heard a lot of it at the meeting, but then a couple of other things came in. So, Mr. Leroux?
Yeah, just full disclosure, Luigi and I met end of last week, and we went over almost all the lists that I think you guys are gonna see, so there's not a whole lot that is was not discussed. So Mr. Luigi is very aware of, and obviously he was at the meeting as well, so, but
And we can reserve the right to add to that list.
Oh yeah, no. It's certainly if
yeah.
we didn't capture the points that the commission made at the meeting. That's
No,
the point of its list.
one of
Right.
the reasons, the only reason we're doing the list is because Mr. Siciliano said at the meeting that some of the questions I was raising, he had not heard before. And I remembered asking him at the pre-app, but I wanted to make sure there was a record that, hey, this is what we're asking about for the POCD. And it's mostly for the POCD. It's the consistency with the plan that's important here. Okay, so
Good to go.
good to go.
Understood.
Thank you, Mr. Romano. I
Thank you, Madam
appreciate
Chair.
it. Just shut the rest of them down.
So are we on to the second item?
Okay, so the second item, I'm going to hand over to Pat because he's dying to fill us in on it, but American Can would like to come in and change the regulation that we approved for the
Well-
BEX for that zone. And Pat wanted to run by us how it gets handled.
Right, so more specifically, the ARC in reviewing the architecture for the project had some comments that they thought would help create more open space in the design. And specifically, it was the limitation in the regulation that was approved last year or beginning of this year, actually, that would that precludes connecting 3 or more units together. So they would like to essentially come in with a revision, or they would like the applicant to go back to us with a revision that said something to the effect of a certain percentage of the total unit count may be 4 or 5 connected units together. But again, not everywhere, just under a qualified increase. And so I want to know if that's something that the commission is interested in accommodating with the ARC, and then we can instruct the applicant to submit an amendment to that point.
I'm sorry, am I the only one? That sounds vague to me.
Well, I don't have the specifics in front of me, so I essentially what I understood the discussion is they think about 10% of the units should be allowed to be connected at a greater density than 3 units, and but not greater than 5. And so if that would essentially be in a project like this, which is almost 200 units, they could have 20 of the units, could be connected greater than 3 in a bunch. And
Would that have the effect of further intensifying and the density from what we last saw?
No, it would be the same total number of units, but instead of having 3 and 3 and 3 and 3 sprinkled all around, or 3s and 2s sprinkled around, there'd be some 4s or 5s sprinkled in there at a certain percentage of that total. Again, likely 10% would be the ask.
And what would, in your mind, be the impact of that?
Well, it's precluded now, so the impact would be they couldn't do it. They couldn't come back to you with that proposal without amending the regulation. And they would like to know sooner than later if that's something that the commission wants to entertain. So the one answer could be that I could take back is show us the plans and then the amendment, or would you like to see the amendment with, are you okay seeing the amendment with the revised plans coming in probably in September?
I for one would be curious as to what this actually looks like.
So it would reduce the footprint because the buildings would not be, spread out.
Spread out.
Right, and so there would be some of the buildings and it would allow for some green, sort of like squares in between those buildings. You know, they're sort of in like a figure eight pattern, for lack of a better description. And
Right,
those,
but one of the impacts of that revised plan that we had seen, not the one you're prospectively talking about,
Yep.
was a much greater feeling of congestion.
Mhm.
And so I'd like to understand, whether this is going to create an increase in that sense of
Right.
congestion.
and I think the goal for the ARC is to address that and minimize or improve, for lack of a better word, the congestion feeling that the commission felt, which I think was shared with the ARC. So I think it's in that line. But again, if you want to see the plans before you have to entertain an amendment, I can certainly let the applicant know that that's the process you'd like to go forward on.
Thank you.
Tracy, and then
Yeah, there you go. Tracy, Nick, Arn, and then Mary. Tracy.
Sorry, my mouse was jumping. I was actually at the ARC meeting that they had, and this is intended for one specific area of the site plan, so that it would allow the units to circle around an open space area. And to be able to move those units without them losing those units, they would need to make 4s instead of 3s. It's not intended for the entire site, at least as of that evening, it was not.
Nick.
So it's an ARC not request, but suggestion.
Yes.
And it's 4-unit buildings, which we saw a long time ago.
But
would
at
they-
a very reduced maximum number. There wouldn't be,
Right.
Again, 10% or less.
Okay, but there was no clarification or suggestion of actually putting it on the other side of the driveway. Because we had seen that once before. There were units on that side below the driveway, if you would.
So the issue on the south loop is that the wetlands buffer comes in and the conservation area comes in, and there's limited space to do work. So they are trying to not go back to wetlands agency as well with the design, because that would have been a change. So it's not, yes, you did see those things. They chose to condense it more westward of the driveway loop instead. And the ARC is trying to suggest things that can make the design work better, which is if you take some of the 2s and put them together, you can reduce that space or that spacing in between the buildings, which can then open up other opportunities. So I don't want to make it sound like the applicant is the driving force there. They liked very much the comment from the ARC, and the ARC was very they were just not pleased with the limitations of the regulation. Let's just say that.
Okay,
the-
I'm following Peter's suggestion. Yeah, I'd like to see a plan first, because
Okay.
it sounds plausible, but when you actually see the layout, does it actually create? What are we factoring? Do we have bigger buildings in a little bit more land, or that kind of thing, or are they going to go out on a limb and actually kind of move them to other places on the site, which actually now really does free up green space around those other buildings?
Yeah,
Right.
and I think that I know it's not fair to talk about ideas in concept, so I think that's fair to say, show us what we saw last time, show us what the iteration is now with the amendment, and then we can, evaluate it that way. Okay.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Arn?
Yeah, a couple of comments. I think we clearly need a public hearing on this, and not, because they were asking.
Oh,
how
no,
do we
no,
wanna
it's
handle
just
it.
the process, how we want to handle it.
Yeah,
We
well,
absolutely
yeah,
cannot
it-
make an amendment without a public hearing.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
just the process of how we want to approach that public hearing is what we're discussing.
Okay, and then that was my only point. So want to see our comments in writing. Number one. Number two, want a quantitative analysis in terms, they're doing this for more green space, I assume. Want a quantitative analysis regarding the increase in green space, if there is any. And then agree with the others, we really have to see the plan showing where this is gonna happen. And the 10% of units that can be no more than 5 is way too vague for me. We're gonna have to specify it more when we see the plans. Thank
Okay.
you.
In fact, I had watched the ARC meeting as well, and I said to Patrick that I wasn't sure you guys were even gonna be open to having it on the agenda. And that's why we're here. How are we gonna handle it? Are you guys open to the discussion? Are you willing to entertain the application? Because you can refuse it at this point. Well, I guess you really, yeah, you could. You could say, no, we're not gonna consider that and vote against it.
Well, we
Mr.
wouldn't,
LaRoe,
we
I'm
wouldn't do
giving you
that. We're
back.
open to new things and suggestions.
Yeah, I don't,
Mr.
I don't want to
LaRoe.
suggest that the applicant should not come in with a text amendment if they want to. I just wanted to really,
Yeah.
like you said, Margarita, do we,
Well,
do you want
well,
to
how do
see
we-
the revision before you see the language change so that you can say, this is not, whatever. How do you want
Right.
the order? Do you want to have it come together next meeting?
Another, what I didn't want, and what I said to Patrick is I don't want the applicant to write a whole text amendment just to have us go, how's this?
Yes.
No, we want to see the plans. Bingo, you guys wanted to see the plans. It was kind of my sense, based on how we got to that 3 units per building restriction, that you guys were gonna have strong feelings about seeing the plans. Mr. LaRoe.
Yes, sorry if I wasn't clear when we started this conversation.
No, it's fine. I opened
Um,
it. It was me who opened it and said they
And
want to
Arn,
come.
you brought up a great point about quantifying the change. I do want to not warn, but just get everyone prepared. I'm not sure, looking at what the ARC was talking about, if there would be an increase in the square footage of quote unquote green space, because like I said, it's sort of, by my eye, it's taking the space between buildings and obviously closing that gap by moving 2 buildings together and then creating a larger, a more cohesive open space instead of the little side yards everywhere. So it's, some of it may not, when you do the math, it may not look as a net change in the positive, but ARC was very interested in creating a layout that would look more open in the design. So that's part of the sort of the art of the whole thing. So I just want everyone to be prepared, not to saying it's good or bad, just that's sort of the concept of what the ARC was getting at.
Okay,
So I will let them know that let's talk about it before we get an application in. And quite frankly, Mary, that helps us get language together, because I do think we need to, I think if we can clarify the payment number, we should do that with any amendment that gets considered. So if the applicant does want to go forward with the change, we can lump that in there, I think.
Yeah, thank you for raising that, Patrick. And also for the record, Madam Chair, I am recused on this because of the involvement of the Affordable Housing Trust. So I'm sorry I did not set the record straight at the beginning, but I did want to address the additional language about the timing of the fee in lieu, and Patrick has done that. So thank you and apologies.
And for the record, I don't think there's a problem. I think Mary was very generous in hearing my concern that I don't know if I followed the way the math works, but so I think it works the way it is right now, and we're not going to change the substance of it, but if the language can be clarified, we should take the opportunity if the amendment's open.
I think, Patrick, a little clarification is appropriate.
okie dokie.
And then oh shoot,
Trying to end the meeting.
I know I had another thing I wanted to ask you, and I'm totally blanking on the. Oh my god, I don't know, Tracy. Do you remember what they would need to ask them about before next meeting?
Patrick, let's everybody go dark and then we'll start the meeting. Let's just come back on again. So we'll leave and come back and then you remember what it is.
That's exactly what's gonna happen. I'm just afterwards. It literally just came in this morning. I was like, oh, we should just ask you guys now that we're all together, and I am totally blanking on what I was gonna ask you guys. Okay, it's not I clearly it wasn't a big deal, so I'm just looking at all my notes in front of me
It
here.
was probably huge. All right. And you're not gonna remember until we all go away.
Right, to Nick's point, if you
All
just
right.
turn your cameras right now, I'll probably be.
So I don't know if we can get someone to, I hate to say this to you guys, if Levy's gonna be away the week before September 1st, that means we're gonna have to do it like next week. An 8:30 G set, and it's just to go over what the statute says and what the case law is and how we word things and how we approach it. That's all, because just to refresh us. Because I think the volume's going to slow down of 830G applications, but it's always good. Okay, and with that, can everybody go now and enjoy the rest of their August Monday?